The ECAJ, the Executive Council of the Australian Jury, has last week made a submission, a very weighty submission, which you can find online, to the Senate Legal and Constitutional Affairs Committee, which is conducting an inquiry into the Commission of Inquiry into Anti-Semitism at Australian Universities Bill. You'll understand the complexity of that when you listen to my next interview with Peter Wertheim, who helped write this submission and will no doubt appear before the Senate Committee. The Senate Committee, by the way, is made up of 3 Labor members, 2 Liberal members, and the Greens member, Mehreen Faruqi, who we've already seen what her view on Gaza, Israel is. So I'm not sure how that's going to pan out. But here's that interview with Peter, which I just managed to record not very long ago. So listen up. So with me this morning is Peter Wertheim from the Executive Council of Australian Jury. Good morning.
Good morning, Gary.
Nice to have you aboard. And you've just finished making a submission to the Senate Legal and Constitutional Affairs Committee on a bill, whether or not, inquiring into a bill, whether there should be an inquiry into anti-Semitism at Australian universities. Why is this bill being subject to an inquiry?
Okay, well, let's just put it in context. So, firstly, there is a private member's bill in the House of Representatives, which was introduced by Julie and Lisa MP, and it calls for a judicial inquiry into anti-Semitism at Australian universities.
Yep.
And a judicial inquiry is very similar to a royal commission. It's got all the powers of a royal commission. It can compel witnesses to appear. It can compel universities and other interested parties to produce documents. It has very significant powers. It also would function like a royal commission, so that witnesses who appear before it can be held in contempt of court if they try to grandstand or use the occasion as a political soapbox and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for all these reasons, that's the preferred way from our point of view,
yep,
of conducting an inquiry into anti-Semitism at Australian universities. The other methods that are available are not quite as effective, in our view, as that method, because they do allow some possibility of abuse. The other thing about a judicial inquiry is that people can seek to give their evidence in camera.
Right.
In other words,
so
anonymously.
You're protecting people that way.
And they need protection because many of them, Jewish students and staff, have told us that they are worried about coming forward and telling their stories and then being victimised and having reprisal action taken against them.
Yep. And
it's a very understandable concern. So that's what the bill has proposed. It has not been voted upon in the House of Representatives. There was a procedural motion to bring it forward and debated, but that procedural motion failed. So at the moment, that bill just sits in the House of Representatives and no determination has been made about it one way or the other.
Right.
Meantime...
This was Julie and Lisa's bill, correct?
That's Julie and Lisa's bill, that's correct.
Yep.
Meantime, in the Senate, Senator Sarah Henderson brought on an identical bill, and of course the numbers are somewhat different in the Senate. But what was significant was that her bill was voted upon not on its merits, but on the basis that it be referred to a Senate committee for an inquiry.
So hence the inquiry.
And that's the inquiry we are now talking about.
Yep.
And it was significant that the vote to have that inquiry was supported by both the government and the opposition, and most of the independents, and it was only opposed by the Greens.
Which independents opposed it?
I don't think any of them did.
Oh, okay.
There were some who were absent from the vote.
Right.
But the only ones voting against it were the Greens.
Right.
The Green senators.
Not a surprise.
Yeah, so it was passed comfortably, and that's why we now have this inquiry.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I want to emphasise, of course, a Senate inquiry also has certain powers, similar to the ones I described earlier,
mm-hmm.
but there is an element of theatre about parliamentary inquiries, and whilst a good chair will control witnesses who want to grandstand and abuse the process, it is, for the most part, an open process and can sometimes be abused for those purposes. So,
mm-hmm.
Whilst we welcome the Senate inquiry in terms of having an inquiry into the bill,
mm-hmm.
The actual inquiry into anti-Semitism at universities is something we would prefer to be a judicial inquiry.
Right. So reading your pretty weighty submission, I see it has, to me anyway, in reading it, it's got three sections, really. One is that there's been a marked increase in anti-Semitism, albeit there'd already been an increase in anti-Semitism on campus, directed both at students and staff in some areas. A second level is that to varying degrees, universities, administrations have not dealt with this well to protect both students and staff. And I guess thirdly and importantly, that the inquiry should be held as a judicial inquiry, not by the Australian Human Rights Commission.
That's correct.
And that's a very marked point as well, I guess.
Well, it's a very important point because the government, of course, following on from the Universities Accord, had commissioned the Human Rights Commission previously to do a study
mm-hmm.
on racism generally in Australia and in Australian universities, but there hadn't been any particular reference to anti-Semitism until the terms were amended in the middle of May to highlight the need for anti-Semitism to be looked at as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of an afterthought. And we received a letter from the Minister for Education, the Federal Minister for Education, Jason Clare, informing us of that change and asking our community to work with that inquiry. And we thought long and hard about it before we responded in early June, saying we can't really make that recommendation to our community. Our community will not have confidence the Australian Human Rights Commission process, and we set out our reasons in that letter,
mm-hmm.
which are very similar to the reasons we set out in our submission.
Right. Okay. And that is, of course, that there have been, amongst other things, there have been people actively voicing pro-Palestinian and, in fact, almost excusing Hamas's so-called resistance.
Well, there have been there's been problematic statements and conduct by some people who have been associated with the Human Rights Commission, either as employees or as contractors or what have you. But there's also been, I think, more importantly, a kind of lukewarm attitude by the Human Rights Commission in recent years to acknowledging the severity of anti-Semitism as a problem in Australia. It's I would say it's a cultural problem as much as a problem involving particular individuals.
I've been in various forums. I've been asking different people, why is this particular issue, the Israel-Gaza war, so much more divisive than the many other issues going on in the world that should be piquing our ire as well. And I get various answers, but to myself, I think the only answer is anti-Semitism.
Well, there's no doubt that anti-Semitism is an undercurrent in a lot of the discourse about the conflict.
Mm.
But that's not uncommon in war. I mean, in any war in which different countries are engaged or different parties are engaged, it's not uncommon for one side to demonise, vilify the other, and so on.
Mm.
What's significant, I think, about the any conflict involving Israel is that it has now been embraced by the broad so-called progressive left. I don't think they're very progressive at all, but that's what they call themselves, as a kind of talisman of their critique of Western civilization more generally. Though Israel is seen, and perhaps rightly seen, as a symbol of Western civilization, of democracy, because Israel is a liberal democracy, and so on. And in the current thinking that prevails in many Western universities, which sees the world in a binary way as a conflict between oppressors and oppressed, between former colonial powers and the people they colonised, and so on.
Yes.
Israel is somehow portrayed as the kind of paradigm of that thinking, and that's why it has become such a hot button issue for the progressive left. Of course, the thinking is fatally flawed because
it misunderstands the facts.
Well, it's a complete misrepresentation of history. It flies in the face of the facts of history.
Yes.
I mean, if Jews came to the Holy Land as colonisers, as they put it, in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, that this must be the only example of colonisation in history in which the colonisers had a 3,000-year unbroken connection with the land they were supposedly colonising.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. This Senate inquiry now, the Senate Legal and Constitutional Affairs Committee will start hearing the various submissions. And I see that the substitute Green on this committee is Senator Mehreen Faruqi, Deputy Leader of the Greens Party, who's made her views on this whole issue very, very clear in the past. What sort of a reception do you think we're going to get? It's 3 Labor Party members, 2 Liberal members, I think, and Mehreen Faruqi. So what sort of a reception do you think our submission will receive?
That's a hard one to predict. I think generally it will be a favourable reception.
Mm-hmm.
I think both the Labor and the Coalition members of the committee will treat the matter very seriously, and I think will accept most of the observations that we've made and the concerns that we've expressed.
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not that results in Labor finally the Labor senators voting in favour of a judicial inquiry remains to be seen.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't expect that they will try to minimise or discount the observations that we've made in our submission, or which have been made in dozens of other submissions. And it's significant that many of them are confidential submissions. They've been the people who've made those submissions have asked that their names not be disclosed, and in some cases that their entire submission not be published because of a fear that it might identify them and lead to adverse consequences for them.
Right.
So there is a very real and obvious concern there.
Yep.
By many of the people who've made submissions. In fact, possibly even the majority. I haven't sort of done a count but it looks like a majority of them have those concerns, and that's something that's going to have to be taken very seriously.
Absolutely. Well, we wish you good luck. We'll certainly keep abreast of this as it develops over, I guess, through September and October. It's due to report by the end of October.
Yeah, 24th of October, that's right.
Right.
And I expect that the hearings will be probably towards the end of September.
So you will be making a public appearance at the inquiry.
I expect so. The invitations haven't been issued yet.
Sure.
But I would expect that the ECAJ will receive an invitation to appear at one of the hearings. Yes.
Well, Peter, thank you for being with us this morning. We wish you all the best, and we'll certainly keep our eye on what's going on. So thanks very much.
Thanks, Gary. All the very best.
You too.